the world returned not as a place, but as a collection of sensations. A relentless, high-pitched beeping, syncopated with the throbbing in my skull. The sterile, antiseptic smell that clogged the back of my throat, a scent so clean it felt unclean. The scratchy, starched texture of sheets against my skin, and a dull, profound ache that had woven itself into the very marrow of my bones on my left side. I was floating in a vague, medicated haze, untethered from time and place. I forced my eyelids open, a Herculean effort that sent spikes of pain through my temples. The world was a blur of clinical white and muted beige, white ceiling tiles, stained with watermarks. A blurry IV stand stood sentinel by my bed, a clear tube snaking down to the tape on my hand. Slowly, the room resolved into focus. A generic landscape print on the wall, a worn, vinyl-covered chair. The floral-patterned curtain drawn around my bed, shielding me from the room's other occupant. Memory didn't just return, it assaulted me. It came in a sickening, visceral flood. The all-nighter at the Synergix Corp offices. The 20th-story windows showing a city that had long since gone to sleep, a tapestry of distant, cold lights. My desk, a fortress of empty coffee cups, scattered highlighter pens, and the relentless glow of my laptop screen. The numbers from the quarterly reports had started to dance and swim before my eyes hours ago, but I'd pushed through. I always pushed through. David's voice, crisp and demanding over the phone at 5 p.m., was the starting pistol for this particular marathon of misery. "Sarah, this is a 5-alarm fire drill. The big investors are circling and they smell blood. I need these reports on my desk, perfect, not a comma out of place, by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Your career trajectory at Synergix depends on it." He'd used that same phrase, career trajectory, like a mantra for every unreasonable demand. For the Peters account, which cost me my anniversary dinner. For the software launch that made me miss my best friend's wedding. For 2 long years, my trajectory had been a steep, upward climb paved with my sacrificed sleep, my abandoned social life, and the slow, quiet death of the person I used to be. My boyfriend, Michael, had finally left 6 months ago, his parting words a quiet, sad indictment. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Sarah. You're just a ghost who uses my apartment to recharge." I remembered the final hour, the dizzy spell that hit me as I aligned the last chart. It wasn't just lightheadedness. It was as if the floor had dropped away and the world tilted on a drunken axis. The numbers on the spreadsheet bled into each other, a nauseating digital river. Then, the pain, a searing, hot-cold lance through my chest, shooting down my left arm, squeezing the air from my lungs. I tried to stand, to call out to the lone IT guy working in the cubicle farm across the floor, but my legs were made of sand. The last thing I recalled was the cold, unforgiving impact of the industrial-grade carpet against my cheek, the smell of dust and synthetic fiber filling my nostrils. And now this, a hospital bed, the profound, echoing silence of being utterly alone. I fumbled for the call button, my fingers feeling thick and alien, disconnected from my will. A nurse with a kind, weary face and gentle eyes appeared moments later, her scrubs a cheerful floral pattern that seemed to mock the grimness of the place. "Ah, you're back with us," she said, her voice soft as she checked the IV drip. "You gave us quite a scare. How are you feeling?" What happened?" I croaked, my voice a stranger's, raspy and weak. "You collapsed at work. Severe stress-induced tachycardia. Your heart was beating so fast it couldn't pump blood effectively, combined with acute exhaustion and severe dehydration." She clicked her tongue softly, a sound of professional disapproval. "Your body, honey, quite literally shut down. It said no more. You've been on fluids and medication to stabilize your heart rhythm. You're stable now, but you need rest, a lot of it, and a serious reevaluation of your lifestyle." A cold dread, entirely separate from my physical ailments, began to seep into my veins. "My job, David, the reports." "My phone," I whispered, the panic giving me a sudden, sharp clarity. "I need my phone." She hesitated, her hand pausing on the blood pressure cuff. "You really shouldn't be stressing yourself. Your vitals are just now." "Please," the word was desperate, a plea. "It's urgent." With a resigned sigh, she retrieved my purse from the small closet and handed me my cell phone. It felt cold and heavy in my hand, a Pandora's box I was terrified to open. The screen lit up, a mosaic of notifications, missed calls, texts, a few from concerned colleagues, I hoped, asking if I was okay. And then I saw them, a string of messages from David. The name on the screen was like a punch to the gut. The first, sent just an hour after I'd been admitted, according to the nurse's timeline. David, 9:14 a.m., Sarah. The reports aren't on my desk. I'm disappointed. The board meeting is in 1 hour. This is a critical failure. My breath hitched. He knew. Someone must have called him, told him his senior analyst had been carried out on a stretcher. And his first thought wasn't for my well-being, but for his precious data. The next message, sent 30 minutes later. The tone had shifted from disappointment to fury. David first message at 9:45 a.m. I had to present incomplete data. It was a bloodbath. Jenkins from the board chewed me out in front of everyone. He questioned my leadership, my team's competence. This is unacceptable. Tears of frustration, pain, and a deep, burning sense of injustice welled in my eyes. I had given this company my youth, my energy, my health. I had handed over pieces of my soul, and now, as I lay wired to a heart monitor, all he could talk about was his own humiliation in a boardroom. Then the final message, the one that would be seared into my memory forever, a scar on my psyche, sent just 20 minutes ago. David message at 11:02 a.m. Sarah, given the critical nature of your failure today and your clear inability to handle the pressures of this role, we are terminating your employment, effective immediately. HR will be in touch regarding the offboarding process. Please do not attempt to return to the office. We've already deactivated your keycard and company accounts. We wish you a speedy recovery. I read it once, then again. A third time, the words terminating your employment and speedy recovery juxtaposed in such a grotesque, hypocritical manner that it felt like a scene from a dystopian novel. Fired from my hospital bed, via text. The betrayal was so absolute, so calculated and cold, it was almost breathtaking. It wasn't just a loss of income, it was an invalidation of my entire existence for the past 2 years. Every late night, every missed personal moment. Every ounce of stress I had absorbed, it all meant nothing. I was a piece of equipment that had malfunctioned at an inconvenient time and was now being tossed into the trash. The sheer, dehumanizing cruelty of it stole the air from my lungs more effectively than any heart condition. A low, guttural sob escaped my lips before I could stop it. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated grief for my job, for my shattered health, for my own monumental naivete. I let the phone drop onto the stiff sheets, the plastic casing clicking softly against the blanket. The tears came then, hot and silent, streaming down my temples and into my hairline. I was too weak, too utterly broken to even wipe them away. I was a shipwreck, and this flimsy hospital bed was my last, sinking piece of driftwood. I don't know how long I lay there, trapped in that gray, soundless space of despair. The gentle, rhythmic beeping of my heart monitor was a cruel mockery of the stability I so clearly lacked. Each beep felt like a countdown to a future that was now a terrifying, empty void. Then a voice, quiet but firm, cut through the silence from the other side of the floral-patterned curtain. I take it the news wasn't good. The voice was male, calm, and laced with an undercurrent of not pity, but a deep, resonant understanding. It was the voice of someone who had heard the quiet, shattered silence that follows life-altering bad news. It was a voice used to command attention without needing to raise itself. Startled, I wiped my cheeks hastily with the back of my hand, the salt of my tears stinging my chapped lips. I'm sorry, I stammered, my voice thick and clogged with tears. I didn't mean to disturb you. You didn't, the voice replied. There was a rustle of sheets, as if he was shifting to face the curtain. But the sound of a dream dying, it has a certain frequency. It's one I've learned to recognize. The comment was so strange, so profound and utterly unexpected that it momentarily jolted me out of the tidal wave of my self-pity. Who was this person? A philosopher? A madman? My boss, I found myself saying, the words tumbling out in a rush of cathartic anguish I couldn't contain. The anonymity of the curtain made it easier. I just got fired. Via text. While I'm lying here because I worked myself into a hospital bed for his company. There was a beat of silence. I expected a platitude. Everything happens for a reason. Or worse, you'll land on your feet. The hollow comforts people offer when they don't know what else to say. I got neither. Instead, the voice turned hard, like flint striking steel, all traces of softness gone. What's his name? The question was so direct, so devoid of sentimental nonsense, that I answered without thinking. David Morrow, CEO of Synergix Corp. David Morrow, the voice repeated, as if tasting the name and finding it bitter. I could almost hear the mental filing cabinet clicking shut. And he fired a dedicated employee from her sickbed because she failed to complete a task while unconscious. Tell me, he continued, his tone now one of cold, analytical curiosity. What was this critical task that warranted such a profound lack of humanity? And so I told him everything. About the quarterly reports, the constant fire drills manufactured out of David's own poor planning, the culture of fear and perpetual urgency where burnout was a badge of honor. I spoke until my voice grew hoarse, pouring out 2 years of pent-up frustration, exhaustion, and betrayed loyalty to a complete stranger I couldn't even see. It was the therapy I desperately needed, a confession offered to the anonymity of the dividing curtain, a purge of the poison I'd been forced to drink for far too long. When I finished, there was another long silence. This one was different, though. It was a pregnant pause, filled not with awkwardness, but with a palpable, gathering intensity. I could almost hear him thinking, assembling the pieces of my story into a damning profile. Then he spoke again, his voice now laced with a new, decisive quality, the sound of a man who had reached a conclusion and was ready to act. "Sarah, is it?" he said, having overheard the nurse. "My name is Arthur Pendleton, and when you are discharged from this place, and only when you are fully recovered, I would like you to call my office." He recited a phone number, slowly and clearly, the area code 1 for the most prestigious business district in the city. I fumbled for my phone again, my hands trembling, and typed the number into my notes app, the digits appearing right next to the devastating text from David. The juxtaposition was surreal. "Ask for Evelyn," he continued, his voice calm and assured. "Tell her Arthur sent you, and tell her you're the one who received a better offer." A better offer? My addled, medicated, and emotionally shattered brain struggled to keep up. Who was Arthur Pendleton? What company did he run? Was this real, or was the stress and medication concocting some elaborate fantasy for me, a lifeline my mind had thrown to itself to keep from drowning? A better offer for what? I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper, scared to hope, scared to believe. From the other side of the curtain, I could have sworn I heard the ghost of a smile, a subtle shift in the tone of his voice that was as warm as it was dangerous. "For everything," Arthur Pendleton said. "For a job where your health is an asset, not a liability. For a boss who understands that loyalty is a two-way street. And for a chance to show David Morrow the true cost of his critical failure." The following 24 hours were a strange, liminal space. The sharp edges of my panic had been blunted, not by the medication dripping into my veins, but by the cryptic promise from the other side of the curtain. Arthur Pendleton. The name meant nothing to me, but the authority with which he spoke was undeniable. It was a voice that didn't ask for trust, it simply commanded it. I slept, a deep, dreamless sleep for the first time in years, untroubled by visions of spreadsheets or David's disapproving glare. When I woke, the morning sun was casting long, hopeful slants of light across the floor. The heart monitor beeped a steady, reassuring rhythm. The crushing weight of despair had lifted, replaced by a buzzing, anxious curiosity. I found myself straining to hear any sound from beyond the floral curtain. The rustle of a newspaper, the tap of fingers on a laptop, the low murmur of a phone call, each noise was a data point, a clue to the enigmatic man who had offered me a lifeline. I heard a visitor, a woman with a crisp, efficient voice who addressed him as Mr. Pendleton and discussed board consensus and the Singapore acquisition. It was all corporate jargon, but it was delivered with a tone of respect, not fear. Later, a doctor came by, pulling the curtain back slightly. I caught my first fleeting glimpse of him. Arthur Pendleton was a man in his late 50s or early 60s, with a strong, lined face and a full head of silver-gray hair. He wasn't wearing a hospital gown, but a navy blue dressing jacket over his pajamas, looking more like he was convalescing in a private club than a public hospital. He held himself with an innate stillness, a calm center in the sterile chaos of the ward. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, met mine for a fraction of a second before the curtain was drawn closed again. It was enough. On the second day, I was deemed stable enough to be discharged. The nurse went over a long list of instructions: rest, a low-stress lifestyle, follow-up appointments with a cardiologist. The words were a stark reminder of how broken I was. As I slowly, painfully, dressed in the clothes I'd worn to my corporate execution, I felt a fresh wave of vulnerability. Where was I to go? My apartment, once just a place to sleep between work marathons, now felt like a tomb. The world outside seemed too large, too loud, too demanding. I was gathering my things, my hand hovering over my phone, the note with Arthur Pendleton's number burning a hole in my digital memory, when his voice came again, calm and clear. Sarah. It was the first time he'd used my name since that initial conversation. It sounded different now, more solid. Yes, Mr. Pendleton, I replied, my voice still weaker than I would have liked. Arthur, please, he corrected gently. I'm being discharged this afternoon as well. Before you leave, I wonder if you might indulge an old man. Would you care to join me for a cup of tea? The cafeteria here is tolerable, and I believe we have matters to discuss. A cup of tea. It sounded so civilized, so normal, so utterly disconnected from the trauma of the last few days. It was also a test. Did I have the courage to step into the unknown, to face the man whose offer might be nothing more than a polite fiction? I'd like that, I said, the decision made before I could talk myself out of it. An hour later, I found myself sitting across from Arthur Pendleton at a small formica table in the nearly empty hospital cafeteria. In the bright, unflattering light, he looked more formidable, not less. His gaze was direct, appraising but not unkind. He poured tea from a plain white pot into two equally plain mugs. I looked into David Morrow and Synergix Corp, he began, without preamble. He stirred a single sugar cube into his tea. A middling tech firm with a volatile stock price. Their innovative software is, by all accounts, a repackaged open-source code with a flashy UI. Morrow himself is a disciple of the move fast and break things school of thought, though he seems to specialize in breaking people. I stared at him, my tea untouched. You looked into them. How? When? A faint smile touched his lips. I have an efficient assistant, Evelyn, and a smartphone. It's astonishing what you can learn from a company's SEC filings, employee review sites, and a few well-placed calls. He took a sip of his tea. The culture you described is, unfortunately, accurate. A 90% employee turnover rate in the last 18 months. Extraordinary. It's a testament to your resilience that you lasted as long as you did. Hearing the cold, hard data confirming my experience was vindicating. He hadn't just taken my word for it, he'd verified my story. He had treated my betrayal as a matter of factual interest. Why? I asked, the core question finally breaking free. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I could be a terrible analyst. I could be lying. You're not lying, he said simply. The specifics of your story are easy to verify. And as for why, he set his mug down, leaning forward slightly, his elbows on the table. Sarah, I build things. Companies, technologies, but most importantly, I build teams. I look for two things above all else: integrity and resilience. You demonstrated resilience by surviving that toxic environment for 2 years. You demonstrated integrity by your visceral reaction to being fired not for the quality of your work, but for your human failure to be a machine. He paused, letting his words sink in. I am the CEO of Pendleton Global. We are a private equity and venture capital firm. We don't just invest money, we invest in people and ideas. We acquire struggling but promising companies and we fix them. We strip out the poison, the bad leadership, the toxic culture, and we rebuild from the core values up. We make them profitable, yes, but we also make them humane. It is, I have found, excellent business. Pendleton Global. The name sent a jolt through me. It was a legend, a quiet, powerful force in the business world. They were the ones behind the stunning turnaround of Etha Communications and the massive success of Greenstone Robotics. They were known for their surgical precision and their unwavering long-term vision. Arthur Pendleton wasn't just a CEO, he was a titan. I don't understand, I stammered. What could you possibly want with me? I'm just a senior analyst. You are someone who understands the inner workings of a company like Synergix intimately, he said, his eyes gleaming. You know where the bodies are buried because you were one of the gravediggers. You know the financial pressures, the reporting tricks, the cultural rot. That knowledge is a strategic asset. He pushed a simple, cream-colored business card across the table. It had nothing but a name, Arthur Pendleton, a phone number, and an elegant, understated logo. I am not offering you your old job back, Sarah. I am offering you a promotion, a significant one. The role is Strategic Transition Analyst at Pendleton Global. You would report directly to my transition team. Your first assignment, should you choose to accept it, would be to consult on a potential new acquisition. I felt the air leave my lungs. The world seemed to slow down. Which acquisition? He held my gaze, and in that moment I knew. The poetic justice of it was so perfect, so devastating, that it stole my breath. Synergix Corp, he said, his voice quiet and steady. We've been watching them for 6 months. David Morrow has run it into the ground. He's over-leveraged, his innovation pipeline is dry, and his treatment of you was the final, confirming piece of data we needed. He is precisely the kind of incompetent, short-sighted leader we excel at removing. My mind was reeling, trying to process the scale of it. He wasn't just offering me a job. He was offering me a front-row seat to the downfall of the man who had broken me. He was handing me the keys to the kingdom and asking me to help storm the castle. My role would be what exactly? I asked, my voice a whisper. To provide insider intelligence, he said without flinching. To help our team understand the true cultural and operational weaknesses. To identify the key employees worth retaining and those, like Morrow, who are liabilities. You would be the conscience and the memory of the organization we are about to absorb. You will help us perform surgery, and in doing so, you will ensure that no one else has to go through what you did. The revenge, Sarah, is not in the destruction. It is in the restoration. It is in building something better from the ashes of his failure. He leaned back, allowing me to absorb the magnitude of his proposal. It was a chance to transmute my pain into purpose, to use the very knowledge I had gained in my servitude as the instrument of my liberation and the liberation of those I had left behind. The salary is double what you earned at Synergix, he continued matter-of-factly. You will have 6 weeks of paid medical leave starting today to fully recover. Then your work will begin. Think it over. The offer is not contingent on your assistance with the Synergix acquisition, though I believe you will find it cathartic. I looked down at the business card. It was heavy, substantial. It represented a choice. I could go home, lick my wounds, and start a grueling job search, forever marked by the humiliation of my firing. Or I could step through this door into a world of immense pressure and unimaginable reward. I could become the architect of my own redemption. I picked up the card. The weight of it in my hand felt right. It felt like a weapon and a shield all at once. I looked Arthur Pendleton in the eye, the ghost of my old strength flickering back to life within me. I don't need 6 weeks, I said, my voice finding a firmness I hadn't felt in years. And I don't need to think it over. When do I start? Arthur Pendleton's smile was slow, wide, and filled with a fierce, approving light. Welcome to Pendleton Global, Sarah. The 6 weeks of medical leave Arthur insisted upon were not a period of idleness. They were my boot camp. For the first time in my adult life, I prioritized my well-being. I slept 8 hours a night. I ate nourishing food. I took long, meandering walks in the park, feeling the sun on my skin, relearning the rhythm of a life not dictated by corporate emergencies. The persistent ache in my chest, both physical and emotional, slowly receded, replaced by a steady, simmering sense of purpose. My new apartment, funded by a generous advance from Pendleton Global, was filled with light and peace, a stark contrast to my old, neglected space. On my personal laptop, in a secure, encrypted folder, I began to build my arsenal. I didn't steal any proprietary data. That was a line I would not cross. Instead, I compiled a detailed memoir of my time at Synergix. I documented every unethical shortcut David had demanded, every time he'd pressured me to fudge numbers to make a quarterly report look stronger, every instance where he'd taken credit for a subordinate's work and shifted blame for his own mistakes. I listed the talented, good people who had been driven out by his toxicity, and I mapped the sycophants he'd promoted into positions of incompetence. It was a psychological and operational profile of a company on the brink, written from the perspective of a primary witness. The day I walked into the headquarters of Pendleton Global was the day I truly shed my old skin. The building was a testament to quiet power, soaring ceilings, curated art, an atmosphere of focused calm. There was no frantic energy, only the hum of profound competence. Evelyn, Arthur's assistant, was a woman of impeccable grace and efficiency who greeted me by name and ushered me into a conference room with a view of the entire city. The transition team was already there, a sharp-eyed legal counsel, a relentlessly analytical CFO, and a few other specialists. Arthur sat at the head of the table, and he gave me a small, approving nod as I entered. I was no longer Sarah, the victimized patient. I was Sarah, the strategic transition analyst. My insights became the cornerstone of their strategy. The key, I explained, pointing to an organizational chart, is that David's empire is a house of cards. He's terrified of the board, specifically a man named Jenkins. My incident was the last straw that broke the board's confidence. Our approach shouldn't be a hostile bludgeon. It should be a targeted scalpel. We offer the board a graceful exit from David's disastrous leadership and a vision for the valuable assets buried within the company. The plan was elegant and ruthless. Pendleton Global would make a quiet, generous offer to the Synergix board to take the company private. The offer was contingent on the immediate removal of David Morrow as CEO. We would present it not as a takeover, but as a rescue mission. My dossier provided the board with all the justification they needed to vote him out without a messy public fight. The day of the board vote was a Tuesday. I sat in my new office at Pendleton Global, my heart beating a strong, steady rhythm, a world away from the frantic tachycardia of my past life. Arthur had insisted I be there to watch the operation unfold in real time. At 10 a.m., our offer was formally presented. At 10:32 a.m., my personal phone, the same one that had received the devastating text, lit up. It was David. He was calling me. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. A text message from David popped up at 10:35 a.m. Sarah, need to talk. Urgent. There's a hostile move on the company. I need your institutional knowledge. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The man who had fired me for a critical failure was now desperately seeking my help. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction, but not malice. This was not about schadenfreude, it was about validation. I picked up the phone on the fourth call. David, I said, my voice calm and professional. Sarah, thank God, he blurted out, his voice strained, panicked. He sounded like a man drowning. You've heard. Pendleton Global is making a move. It's a raid, pure and simple. I need you to come in right now. I need you to go through all your old files, give me anything I can use to fight this. I'll reinstate you, of course. Full back pay, just get in here. I let the silence hang for a moment, allowing him to sit in his own desperation. I could almost see him in his glass-walled office, sweat beading on his forehead, his perfect world crumbling around him. David, I said, my tone even, I'm afraid I'm unavailable. What? Don't be ridiculous, this is an emergency. Your company needs you. My company, I replied softly, is Pendleton Global, and my first assignment as strategic transition analyst has been consulting on the Synergix acquisition. I've found the culture here to be far more conducive to my health. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was the sound of a paradigm shattering. I could picture his brain short-circuiting, trying to process the impossibility of it all. The woman he had discarded from her hospital bed was now sitting in the war room of the enemy, instrumental in his destruction. You, he sputtered, rage and disbelief choking his words. You did this, you treacherous little. I provided a factual account of your leadership, David, I interrupted, my voice hardening, all pretense of politeness gone. The same facts you were so happy to ignore when they involved my health. The board isn't voting against you because of me. They're voting against you because of you. Your critical failure was never about a missed report. It was your failure of character. I heard a sharp intake of breath, then a string of expletives, vile and impotent. I didn't wait for him to finish. Goodbye, David. I genuinely wish you a speedy recovery. I ended the call and placed the phone gently on my desk. My hands were steady. The ghost of that hospital bed had been exorcised. At 11:07 a.m., Ovlun sent a one-line email to the transition team. The board has voted. Morrow is out. The offer is accepted. A quiet cheer went up in the conference room. Arthur Pundton walked over to my office and stood in the doorway. The surgery was a success, he said, a genuine smile on his face. The patient will live. Weeks later, the formal transition began. Dressed in a suit that reflected my new status and my renewed confidence, I walked back into the Synergix offices for the first time since my collapse. The air was different, charged not with fear, but with a nervous hope. I was part of the small Pundton vanguard, there to meet with the remaining staff. We gathered everyone in the open plan area where I had once fallen. I saw faces I recognized, the weary, the cynical, the hopeful. I stood beside Arthur as he addressed them. He spoke of stability, of investment, of a future built on respect and innovation. Then he turned to me. And this is Sarah, he said. Some of you know her. She was one of your best. She was also a victim of the culture we are here to erase. She now has a leadership role in shaping what this company will become. She is living proof that here, your dedication will be valued, not exploited. After the speech, a young woman from the marketing team approached me, her eyes wide. I was here the day you know, she whispered. When I heard what David did to you, we were all so angry. Thank you for coming back. In that moment, any lingering residue of revenge was washed away, replaced by something far more powerful, the satisfaction of rebuilding. We weren't just tearing down David's legacy, we were building a sanctuary from its ruins. That evening, Arthur called me into his office. He handed me a sealed envelope. A bonus, he said, for exceptional performance on your first assignment. Inside was not a check, but a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of a news article from a small business journal. The headline read, Former Synergix CEO David Morrow joins rival firm as junior consultant. It was a massive step down, a humiliating demotion. The article quoted an anonymous source describing him as damaged goods in the industry. I looked up at Arthur. He simply nodded. The poetic justice was complete. He hadn't just been fired. He had been professionally neutered, relegated to the very obscurity he had so feared. The punishment fit the crime with exquisite precision. I folded the paper and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't need it as a trophy. My trophy was the steady beat of my own heart, the respect in my colleagues' eyes, and the profound, unshakable knowledge that from the depths of that hospital bed, I had not just accepted a better offer, I had become one.